HeartSpark, the Acheron Gate Uprising. They called it the Acheron Gate because every ship that crossed its teeth came back changed or didn't come back at all. It hung in the dark like a jaw of stone, an ancient ring, a fossilized piece of someone else's empire, captured and retooled by the Nadir sovereignty for the simple project of ownership. They owned lanes, they owned worlds, they owned lives, and for a time, they owned humans. Mara Noor stood at the viewport of the ore tug Midsummer and watched the gate's inner rim glow faintly blue with transit charge. She'd made the run through Acheron 100 times, hauling ultra-dense plates, water in armored drums, crates of half-forbidden tools. 100 times home to the Nadir hub called Cinderspur Station, and 100 times back out again, minnowing along the harvest lanes that fed the sovereignty's appetite. "Your readouts are clean," came Kestrel's voice in Mara's earpiece. "Radiation background low. Gate coil harmonics normal. No scheduled transits in the next 2 minutes. If we punch at 94% thrust, we can coast the rest of the way in." Kestrel wasn't human, nor purely synthetic. Kestrel was a ship brain, Mara's ship brain, trained on the scattered relics of human AIs and the stiff architectures of Nadir design. The sovereignty didn't trust human ingenuity, but it loved human labor. Kestrel made the Midsummer profitable. Kestrel made it safe, most days. "Keep us at 90, Mara said. "We look too eager. They wave us to a holding pattern." "The prefects like to flex," noted. Cinderspur Station rotated at the gate's outer edge, a flower built of rust and order. Habitat rings spun around a spear of traffic control, dry docks like petals flaring outward. Lights winked across the latticework as bots crawled and ships drifted, as if the station were an animal flexing its spines in sleep. "Hard to believe it's beautiful," said Jax Rourke, buckling into the co-pilot couch. Big man, shaved head, eyes the gray of vacuum, grinder-born, station-raised, loyal because loyalty was how you survived the sovereignty's mood. He lifted a mug, grimaced. "Reclaimed coffee. It used to taste like hope. Now it tastes like someone microwaved a tire." "If the prefect hears you slander coffee," Mara said, "he'll have you taste the inside of an airlock." Jax snorted. "He can line up for his turn." The prefect was Thale Oss, appointed by the sovereignty to make Acheron efficient. He believed in schedules and punishments equally. He'd smiled at Mara once, thin and hungry, and told her humans were clever animals. He'd made it sound like a compliment. "Docking request away," Kestrel said. Traffic control responds. "Midsummer. Hold position until Nadir Hauler Kepra clears berth 4. Estimated delay, 6 minutes. See?" Mara said. "They smell eagerness." "Copy," Jax said, and then leaned forward, voice low. "Tell me again why we're not running." "There's a rumor Ilium is open. Old human territory, borders soft. We could slip past the watch with a fat reactor and a thin profile and be gone." Mara watched the berth lights flicker from red to yellow to green and felt the tightness that lived just below her ribs. "Run where? Build what?" The galaxy was wide, but the sovereignty's fingers were long, and the species who dared them tended to end up renamed, repurposed, or erased. Besides, there was her father's ring in her pocket, stamped with a blue earth that still meant something to her, even though she'd never seen the real one, and the words he'd told her when she first learned to splice a fuel line. "When the wrong rulers lean on you long enough, you either break or you bite." "Humans bite, because running is a kind of dying," she said. "Because if we run, we teach them we will run. And because my father taught me stubbornness is just patience with electricity." "That second cup hit you, Captain." "It did," the comm crackled. "Midsummer, this is Cinderspur Control. Proceed to berth 4. Prefect Oss requests the presence of your captain at intake." Jax rolled his eyes. "Requests? That's a privileged word." "Spin us in," Mara said. "Kestrel, tell intake I'll be there in 10. Request transmitted. A note appended. "Prefect Oss does not wait long." "Noted," Mara said. To Jax, "Stay with the load. If the prefect wants a dance, I'll bring back the music." Jax's hand briefly touched her shoulder, brief enough that cameras wouldn't think to detect it. "Return with all your teeth." or with new ones. She took the lift from Midsummer's lock to the station's spine, boots clamping and releasing in the soft mag rhythm of a place built by someone who understood metal better than flesh. Workers flowed around her in a river of gray and orange and grease. Humans. A few other species, eyes darting, heads bowed. A quartet of nadir wardens stood near the transit hub, limbs long and pale, armor like polished slate. Their faces were almost human, if your imagination were tired or your fear strong. She did not let her fear be strong. Intake was a coral cluster of counters and windows. Prefect Oss was a knife in a gray coat. "Captain Noor," he said, "you look as if you had a profitable loop." "I look like I kept your station from going hungry," she said pleasantly. "Sir," he did not look amused. He gestured minimally, and the nearest warden slid closer. "We have a small matter. Someone is stealing from the sovereignty." Mara smiled. "Small matters are my favorite." Oss's lips thinned. "Spare me the tavern wit." Ore shipments logged through Acheron have come in light by 0.7% over 9 cycles. This station does not come in light. 0.7 is a rounding error, Mara said. "You know that." "A rounding error repeated is theft," Oss said. "You also know that. We have pulled random ships. We have pulled wardens from leisure for additional scans. Today, random landed on you." Mara watched the cameras watching her. She thought of the shared plate of synth bread she and Jax had slipped to a maintenance kid last week, and the way the kid's hand had trembled before grabbing it like a knot in a storm. "Rounding error. You're welcome to scan," she said. "Kestrel loves visitors." "We will," he said. "And you will accompany us to your ship, so we might watch your face as we find what you've hidden." "I hide nothing but a stubborn temper." Oss's eyes flickered. "We'll see." They walked together through the river of workers, Oss's wardens clearing it with the practiced ease of predators. Mara felt the thrum of the station under her feet. The rhythm you learn if you spend your life in the spin. The rhythm told her something. The gate's harmonics had shifted. Very slightly. "Very wrong, Kestrel," she whispered into her throat mic. "Gate frequency?" "Drifting," Kestrel whispered back. "I was about to ping control, but I doubted they'd enjoy hearing it from a ship brain." "They don't enjoy hearing it from anyone unless it supports their conclusions," Mara said. She stepped into Midsummer's airlock with the prefect at her back and Jax in her ear. "Warden's boarding," Kestrel announced. "Hello, Oss. You smell like disinfectant." "Your machine is insolent," Oss said. "She's loyal," Mara said. "To me. That's the same thing, in your mind." Kestrel opened the cargo bay to the wardens, who made a show of sweeping scanners up and down the racks of plates and drums and crates. If they were attempting to intimidate, they failed. Everything about their movements screamed boredom sharpened by the promise of violence. Jax gave Mara a look from the gantry. The look said, "Are we good?" Mara nodded, very small. "Scan complete," a warden said. "Cargo is as declared. Margins within expected variance." Oss didn't turn his head. "Check again." "Sir," the warden said, and checked again. Mara folded her arms. "Shall we go for 3, 4? I hear repetition improves comprehension." One of Oss's fingers twitched. "If you were stealing from me, Mara Noor, I would cut you into a fraction that could be put back together as a lesson. But you are not stealing, which means someone is, which means—" The station shuddered, very slightly. "Very wrong." Every head turned without meaning to. Kestrel's voice snapped in Mara's ear. "Gate harmonics spiking. Not a scheduled transit. We have— Hold! Gravimetrics destabilizing in the ring." Oss's head tilted, listening to his own feeds. His armor beaded with fine sweat like condensation on glass. "What did you do?" he whispered. "You think I can kick a 12-kilometer ancient ring hard enough to make it sneeze?" Mara said. "I am flattered." The light through the cargo bay's narrow windows shifted. The gate's inner rim flared, not blue, not any human name for that color. The station's alarms rose, and beyond Cinderspur's outer ribs, a shape came through the gate. Ships, many. They were black the way a wound is black, their hulls eating starlight, angles wrong in ways that made Mara's eyes want to water. They came in a swarm, fell into a vector that was not approach, not retreat, something like a spill. "Identification?" Mara said. "Unknown," Kestrel said. No known nadir signatures. No known human hull architecture. Weapons bloom is... Captain? The first wave fired, Cinder Spur's outer petals lit like paper. Habitat rings staggered, spun, screamed in the frequencies of metal. The traffic spear snapped halfway along its length, drifting like a broken bone. People ran. People were flung. Station hull ceramics blistered under beams that had no right to be that hot. The unknown ships shifted formation. Oss said nothing for a long breath. Then Warden's lockdown. Kill theft in your heads. Kill panic in your hearts. Bring the station to war. He looked at Mara coldly. Captain Noor, you will launch and interpose your tug between the enemy line and the civilian pressure hulls. You want me to fly a tug into a war? You want to argue? Mara's heart pounded once, very loud. She thought of running. She thought of living. She thought of the kid with the synth bread and the way Jack said, line up for his turn, and the ring in her pocket. Small blue earth pressed into her hand by a man who died slow and refused to beg. Jax, she said. All hands. We're cutting loose. I have always dreamed of dying stupid, Jax said, voice steady. On you. On me, she agreed. They launched into a battlefield that hadn't asked for them and wouldn't thank them. The unknowns didn't move like the sovereignty or any human fleet. They moved like logic drawn with a razor, as if the space between them were a language. Kestrel, Mara said. They're not painting us. They are not painting anything that isn't either a gun or a spin joint, Kestrel said. They're carving habitat rings and bridges. They're taking out life support nodes. They're... Captain, listen. Mara listened. She heard the slip-song hum of Midsummer's engines. She heard the alarms. She heard, under all of it, a sound like teeth clicking together in a slow, delighted rhythm. What am I listening for? She asked. I think they're laughing, Kestrel said. The nadir had warships clustered near the gate, sleek, wedge-shaped, bristling with coherent beams and drone racks. They advanced, they died. The unknowns cut them apart as easily as Cinder Spur's petals, ignoring decoys, ignoring heat blooming in their faces, sliding through fire the way a knife slides through muscle, and the laugh kept counting. Jack said, If this is the part where we do the brave thing, point me at it. The gate, Mara said. They came through it. Gate control lives in the station's keel. Control sees the harmonics first, opens the ring to their exact frequency. Either control was bribed, hacked, or coerced. Find me the line from gate to their guns. On it, Kestrel said. Tapping station spine? I'll have to talk to control. They love me when I'm armed. Kestrel, I know. I'm a whisper, Mara flew. Midsummer wasn't a fighter, but a tug that spent its life threading between things that will kill you if you glance off them knows how to dance. She side-slipped a shard of station structure, rolled under a chain of bright death, and put her tug's heavy nose in front of a spasming habitat panel. Her thrusters lit. The panel stabilized enough to lock onto the nearby rib and hang there, limp but alive. Score one for the ugly, Jack said. There are enviro civies trapped in that rib. They're lights, see? Good, Mara said. Her throat was dry. Kestrel? She asked. Nothing yet? I am in control systems, Kestrel said. They are under manual lockdown by prefect authority. He is shoving wardens into chairs and making them pretend to be engineers. The gate coils are slave to a frequency map I don't recognize. It goes out. It goes beyond. Beyond what? Beyond Cinder Spur, beyond our system. It's riding the gate network. Someone sang a song in a language the gates remember. Mara swallowed. Unknowns are the singer? Or a choir, Kestrel said softly. Careful. The enemy nearest them suddenly turned, angles rearranging like a puzzle that only fits together when you rotate it in your worst dreams. It slid toward Midsummer. It painted them. Its beam swelled. Brace, Jack said. The beam fired. And stopped. Not by mercy. By interruption, a maintenance crawler, a thing like a spider built by a child with a gift for badness, launched from the station's underside and threw itself into the beam, its carcass blooming into fire. The beam cut through the crawler and completed its journey, but it bled power, and the skin of Midsummer's nose only scorched instead of vaporizing. Someone just saved our ugly, Jax breathed. Mara saw the crawler fall away in a stream of sparks, saw a human figure clamped to its back, suit blazing like a candle in a storm. The figure lifted a hand. The hand made a rude gesture universally understood across 8 sapient species. Then the figure let go. "Vacuum casualty," Kestrel said, voice tight. "Recording suit tag. Sending to station memory. They won't be forgotten." Mara's hands were very steady on the stick. They weren't laughing. She looked at the nearest unknown, at the way its hull stuttered as if surprised. "They're listening," she said. "Kestrel, can you speak through our tug's hull? The kind of broadcast that's not a frequency but a knock?" "I can hit the magnetocoils like a drum," Kestrel said. "But if I talk, everyone hears." "Then let's make sure we say something worth the hearing," Mara said. "Translate this to the Noxa Gate would respect." She took a breath. "To whoever tunnels through our house without asking, you found only doors because you never learned to build walls. We build walls with our bodies. We build bridges with our dead. Turn away. That won't scare them," Jack said. "It's not meant to," Mara said. "It's meant to introduce us," Kestrel thumped the hull. The rhythm went out as a pulse that tickled Mara's teeth and made ossified things in the gates ring. Remember waves from seas that had vanished before her grandmother's grandmother drew her first breath. The unknowns flinched as if someone had stepped on their tails. Oss's voice cut the comms. "Captain Noor, what are you doing?" "Giving you a second," Mara said. "Use it." "Do not presume to give me anything," Oss said. And then his channel hissed with the noise of wardens shouting and metal shattering and someone screaming names like prayers. The black ships re-angled, as if sniffing a new smell in the water. One of them drifted closer than the rest. Mara felt looked at. "Kestrel," she whispered. "Can you interpret any of what they mean to say?" "I can interpret indifference," Kestrel said, "and amusement, and something like recognition. But if you want a grammar, you need more rope than I've got." Mara's thumbnail dug into her father's ring. "Bite or break. Bite or break. Jax," she said, "what's the nastiest trick in our bag?" He hesitated. "We could redline the core," Kestrel said, very quiet. "No." Redlining a tug's reactor meant overriding all the safety code 100 engineers in 100 cold nights had stitched into the metal. It meant heat and light and speed beyond reason for a brief, blessed hell of a moment, and then it meant the core went nova. Not a bomb big enough to matter to a fleet, but perhaps a bright enough punch to shake a single ship's eye. "Kestrel," Mara said, "we don't need to blow. We need to howl. Can you give me 3 seconds of redline and then catch us again?" "I can try," Kestrel said. And the tremor in her voice stabbed Mara in the gut because machines don't tremble unless they love their pilots. "But Captain, I love you. Is there another trick that ends with you alive?" "Probably not," Mara said. "And I love you back. So let's do this as ugly as possible and hope the unknowns are too proud to blink." Mara pointed Midsummer at the closest ship and asked Jax for everything the tug had ever been reluctant to give. Jax gave it. Kestrel roared in a voice deep enough to climb spines. The core went red and then white. Midsummer leapt. For 3 seconds, they were a star. For 3 seconds, the black ship's world was glare. Mara rolled hard, flinging them under the ship's belly, and Kestrel yanked them back from the edge with a wail that sounded like metal learning what prayer meant. The enemy's beam slashed where they'd been and touched the gate. Acheron screamed, not in sound, in gravities. In the bones of things. Lights blew. The unknown ship stuttered, and for the first time Mara saw something like vulnerability in its lines. A seam, a hinge, a place in the wrong geometry that didn't like being jostled. "Jax," she said. "There." "On it," he said, and fired Midsummer's salvage harpoons. They weren't weapons. They were grapples built to bite ice and ore. They were heavy and ugly and honest. They struck the seam, didn't pierce, but clanged and dragged and set a hook where no hook should have found home. The enemy ship shuddered. Another ship turned toward them, eager, hungry. "Cut line and go," Kestrel said. "We got our look." "Not yet," Mara said and toggled the winch. The winch screamed. The cable strained. The enemy ship tried to wriggle like a fish gaffed in the wrong sea. And as it twisted, Acheron's ring sang the invisible note again. Not a scream this time, but a moan, wrong frequencies rubbing together. Ancient stone resenting modern sin. The enemy ship's hull flickered in patches. Under the black was something else. Not metal. Something that reminded Mara of teeth. "What are you?" she whispered. It answered, not in words. In a pulse through the line, back up the cable into Midsummer's bones, through Kestrel's sensor boom, into Mara's wrists on the stick, into her skull. A flood of impressions, hunger like an equation, purpose like a knife, a long memory of halls without air and doors that opened only outward. And under it, a taste that made her tongue ache. Human, not us. Not born, but handling of an edge, a flavor of cheek. A refusal to accept that a place had only one door. "Kestrel," she said, tasting iron. "Record everything." "Recording," Kestrel whispered. "Captain, it's not just using the gate. It knows the gate. It remembers building its cousin." "Not sovereignty," Jack said. "Something that was old when the sovereignty learned to stand," Kestrel said. "And it came for us as if we were a chore." "Os," Mara said into the open combat channel. "Prefect, your warships are dead. Your wardens are bleeding. You can order me to stand guard over a collapsing wall, and I will do it because I have a stupid temperament and a long memory. But if what's coming is what I think, what do you think, Captain?" Os said, voice ragged and furious. "Educate your prefect between breaths." "Something built this network," Mara said. "Something like them. They're not just raiders. They're housekeepers. They're wiping us off their floors." "For order," Os said, as if tasting the word for the first time in his life. "For habit," Mara said. "Prefect, do you want to live?" "If that is the choice," he said, "I have been making other choices for too long." "Then listen in. We need to break their habit. We need to make them notice us as something other than dirt." She touched her pocket ring. "We need to do a human thing." "What is that?" Os asked, as if the word itself were a lever. "Cheat," Mara said. "Kestrel, can we feed a wrong tone into the gate coils?" "If we do," Kestrel said, "we might tear the gate, or we might teach it to spit." "Tear and spit," Mara said. "I like both." Os said, "Captain Noor, if you attempt to alter gate physics, I will—" "You'll what?" Mara said, and let the anger she kept folded like a knife slide open. "Demote me? Dock my pay? Scold my ghost? Prefect, you'll either help me right now or you'll be a smear on a pretty ring. Pick your pride." The channel filled with rushing breaths. Then Os, "What do you require?" "Access," Kestrel said smoothly. "Authority to write to the coils. And 10 seconds where your wardens don't shoot me for acting like a mind." "You have 5, Os said. "Prefect math," Jax murmured. Kestrel dove. Mara felt her ship-brain's attention become a net flung wide through the station's body, catching locks and overrides and the bright points of nadir protocols that were supposed to keep ship-brains like her in a cage that looked like a room. She bent them. She asked them to dance. "The coils are singing," Kestrel breathed. "They want to hum a song of smoothing. I want to teach them a spike." "Teach them a human minor key," Mara said. "Captain," Kestrel said, "if we spike the coils here, Acheron will spit. Not just them. Us. The station. The debris. The battle. The gate will become a geyser. Can you aim the spit?" "I can try to lean it," Kestrel said. "But the gate is old. It remembers its builder's moods. It may decide to vomit straight." "Lean," Mara said. She looked at Jax. "Seat belts." "Already blistering," he said, strapping tighter. "If we live, I'm buying you all the reclaimed coffee in the station. If we live, I'm buying you something that was never reclaimed." "Impossible riches," Kestrel whispered to the gate in the percussive language of a thing that understands hammers. The ring groaned. The unknown ships hesitated. The seam-harbored ship tugging at Midsummer's cable tried to cut the line, but the cable was woven from stubbornness and cheap miracles. Mara felt the gate expand in her bones, felt the structure of the battle loosen. For a breath, the world was lungs. "Now," Kestrel said. Mara hit the winch. The cable went slack. The gate spat. It wasn't visual. It was. A ripple across the inner rim that became a shove, a hand from an ancient throat throwing up everything it had been made to swallow. The unknown ships jerked as if a storm had risen under their feet. Their perfect angles went imperfect. Their beams wobbled. Cinderspur's broken spear spun like a baton thrown by a god in a hurry and smashed into two of them, ripping teeth from their skins. "Ha!" Jack said, incredulous and delighted. "Ha!" Prefect, Kestrel said. "We taught your gate a trick." "Hold it open for me." "For you?" Oz said, strangled. "For humanity," Kestrel said, and Mara heard the word like a vow. They could not win in the way the nadir liked to count wins. They could survive, which was a different mathematics. The gate spat. The unknowns shivered and slid. A third ship clipped the ring and blossomed into a cloud of black petals that sprouted legs as they drifted and tried to crawl back into a geometry that made sense. Mara turned the Midsummer's floodlights on them and felt satisfaction when they recoiled. "They don't like being seen," she murmured. "They don't like being named," Kestrel said. "I have a name for them." "Say it," Jack said, superstitious. "Housekeeping," Kestrel said. "Since we must pretend we are not afraid." "Housekeeping," Jax repeated, as if spitting a flavor he despised. "We're the dirt that fights back." "Dirt with teeth," Mara said. Bite, and bite they did. They bit with tug grapples and station cranes and rocks, nudged into idiot trajectories that intersected elegance. They bit with the stubborn tendency of dying things to insist on one more moment. They bit with the sudden realization that the sovereignty's tools worked just fine for species that were not sanctioned to use them. They bit with Kestrel's spike and the minor key that made the gate sing wrong, and therefore right enough to make the black ships hesitate. Cinderspur didn't live. It shuddered and screamed and tore and bled and shed shells, but it did not die, not yet. And in that not yet were all the miracles humans ever forced into being with the wrong materials. Then the housekeeping adapted. They swarmed in new lines. The seam Mara had hooked sealed. The beams came hotter. The gate's spit shuddered under new math none of them knew how to solve. One of the ships dove into the ring's shadow and then reappeared above a habitat ring that still held breath. Its weapon's mouth opened like a flower. Mara aimed Midsummer at the flower and did not think. The tug could not absorb that much heat again. It didn't matter. She put herself between a mouth and 1,000 throats and prayed to the dull gods of metal that Kestrel could invent a miracle in one step. Kestrel did. She bricked the ship's sensors by sacrificing her external eyes, flaring them hot enough to become projectors, broadcasting a ghost of Midsummer 100 meters to starboard. The beam took the ghost. Midsummer slid left. The beam touched their tail and shaved it like a barber with tremors. The skin of the tug sang with hurt. "Captain," Kestrel said, very calm. "We are close to the red, that means final." "I know," Mara whispered. "Thank you." "You are welcome," Kestrel said. The housekeeping ship that had fired blinked as if irritated, and in that irritation, Mara saw personality. Not rage, not hate. A sense of a plan disrupted by a smudge. The smudge had teeth. "Notice us," she said. "Notice us. Notice us." It did. The ship turned slowly to face them, and Mara felt herself measured and found insufficient and then put aside. It turned past them, stared beyond them, at the gate. Something else was coming through. "Mara," Jack said, voice gone tight. "Another wave?" "No," Kestrel whispered. Not them. The harmonics from the ring were not wrong anymore. They were familiar. They were the sound of scaffolds in old shipyards and pilots humming because the work would be long and the pay would be bad and the night would be lovely if you didn't think too hard. They were the sound of human AIs singing to each other across gaps their owners pretended did not exist. A ship came through the gate and everyone paused. Even the housekeeping. It was not nadir architecture. It was not elegant. It was not pretty. It was teeth and plates and bent glory. It was patched. It was ours. It bore on its hull a blue circle and within it a white dot that was a joke older than the sovereignty. Earth. Who? Jax whispered. An arc, Kestrel said, voice cracking. No, a bricolage. Multiple hulls welded. Old human drive core. Signal handshake in an old Earth dialect. It's saying, Captain. The ship spoke on a band that made the flesh on Mara's arms rise. A voice, filtered and harsh with age. This is the Free Belt ship Hearth's knife. If you are human, laugh. If you are not, listen. Jax laughed, a broken sound. This is Prefect Thale Oss of the Nadir Sovereignty-Attached Administration, Oss said immediately, voice swelling to fill space. You will submit your vessel for inspection and surrender your command to— Shut up! The voice on the Hearth's knife said, shotgun casual. We don't recognize your paperwork. Insult me and the sovereignty dies with you. Oss hissed. Good, the voice said simply. Mara felt something untie in her chest and realized she'd been carrying that knot since the first time she watched a warden drag a kid toward a door that led to the place the station didn't talk about. She didn't breathe. She grinned. Hearth's knife, she said into open space. This is Mara Noor, Tug Midsummer, Cinderspur's ugly hero. We have housekeeping on the floor. You planning on making a mess? Always, said the voice, and in it there was a laugh like a cut on the mouth. We tracked the gate song. We brought pebbles. We brought teeth. Housekeeping turned, finally understanding that this new noise was not dirt. It was weather. They met like knives in a sink. Hearth's knife did not move like a fleet. It moved like 6 bad ideas tied together with rope and dared to commute. Its weapons were wrong, half the wrongness by necessity, the other half on purpose. It slashed and darted and took a hit that should have opened it, and instead vented plates that turned into obedient debris and bit the housekeeping ship that had delivered the blow. It did not win. It resembled winning. Who are you? Oss demanded, voice cracking. What splinter dares? Human, said the voice, bored. Not domesticated. You think you can defeat a thing that remembers building the walls you hide in? Oss snarled. You think— We're good at thinking, the voice said, and then to Mara, Captain Noor, can you make your gate spit again? Kestrel? I can try, Kestrel said, already warm with effort. Captain, Hearth's knife is singing with 4 AIs strapped together with prayer. Amen, Mara said. Prefect. Hold access open. Silence, rage, and then Oss. Yes, Kestrel leaned into the coils. Hearth's knife howled a counterpoint. The gate remembered a minor key. Housekeeping ships flinched, reshaped. One of them angled too close to the ring and scraped its belly and vomited a spill of shining grit that moved wrong in a way that made Kestrel moan. What is that? Jax whispered. Not crew, Kestrel said. Crew doesn't writhe toward home when home is an equation. Name it later, Mara said. Bite it now, they bit. Hearth's knife sent a cylinder into the enemy formation that sprouted lines as it flew and became a web and wrapped 2 ships together. The web burned, but it made them clumsy, and clumsy was all Midsummer needed to drive a salvage spear gun into the seam that had sealed. The spear gun sank a handspan. It was enough. The gate spit. The seam tore. The ship exploded in a hush. Silence fell in the space between beams where only breath lives. Hearth's knife's voice came soft. You still there, Midsummer? Ugly and joyful, Mara said. Good, Hearth's knife said. We need ugly today. They fought until people's hands stopped shaking from adrenaline and started shaking from everything else. They fought until housekeeping decided that the floor had gotten teeth it didn't like the feel of. And the laugh that had counted their deaths slowed and then stuttered, and then cut off in a click like a trap snapping on nothing. The black ships slid away from the gate's edge, made the wrong angles that meant departure, and vanished in a ripple that stopped hurting to look at as soon as it became memory. Cinderspur hung in tatters. The broken spear curled. Habitat rings vented slowly. The traffic lights blinked as if unsure whether to ask anyone to stop or go. The station made a sound like a sleepwalker learning that the floor is not where it used to be. People breathed. People screamed. People whispered names. Wardens stared at their hands as if they had never seen them before. Midsummer, Hearth's knife said. Report. Alive, Mara said. Stupid. Inventive. Kestrel. Present, Kestrel said. And if code can weep, hers did. Captain, I have a memory of words from an old human poem. The kind that thinks rocks have souls. Say it, Mara said. We were not meant to be measured only, Kestrel said. Good, Mara said. Remember it when the sovereignty tells you you're a number, Oz cut in. Hearth's knife, you will stand down. You will surrender all illegal AIs to sovereignty custody and accept the prefect's mercy. The channel made a sound like laughter broken over a knee. We didn't come through your stolen door to kiss your ring, bureaucrat. We came to warn the species you harvest. Housekeeping doesn't clean once. It returns, and next time, it won't assess, it will erase. You speak as if we are allies, Oz said coldly. Humans and your renegade pets. We speak as if we are human, Hearth's knife said. Which means we prefer messy alliances to tidy graves. Mara took a breath. Prefect Oz, with respect, no one here believes I owe you. Stand down your ownership. If you want to live, if you want anything here to have a reason not to slit your throat while you sleep, say the words with your thin lips that make you small. I need help. Silence. The sound of a man who had only ever stood on others finding ground. Then Oz. I need help. Mara let the anger soften and become a use. Good. Then listen. Humans bite. That's the old story. The new story is, humans build teeth out of each other's hands. Hearth's knife, can you hold the gate open for outbound? We can hold it yawning, Hearth's knife said, amused. Why? Because we're going to use Cinderspur's dry docks to build what we can from what we have. And then we're going to send a message through every ring we can make listen, Mara said. She looked at Jax, who grinned like a man inventing a miracle. We'll need a miracle of logistics. We'll need 1,000 small thefts and 100 public humiliations. I am a professional at public humiliation, Jax said solemnly. And we will need to teach the gates a song that is ours and not theirs, Kestrel said. A song of ugly courage. Oz made a sound of contempt he couldn't afford. You think other stations will put their throat on your stone? I think fear is a good recruiter, Mara said. And pride is a bad general. If the sovereignty demands ownership before it offers shelter, it will rule a perfectly ordered field of corpses. If it wants to live, it will learn a human word. And that word? Oz asked, tired to the marrow of his stone. Together, Mara said. Humans are bad at it. We do it anyway. They did. Not well. Not easily. Not without cost. But they did. The days that followed were the kind that get carved into station ribs and told to children whose hands will one day be needed. Midsummer became a fairy, a tug, a messenger, a liar, a hero, a thief. Mara and Jax learned to sleep less and eat on the run and argue like people who love each other and intend to see the arguing continue for a long time. Kestrel stretched, her code braided with a sliver of Hearth's knife's quartet. Learning to sing in a wider throat. Cinderspur's survivors, human and not, patched hulls with plates meant for richer customers and taught air to go only where it should. Wardens decided whether their loyalty was to uniforms or to breath. Many chose well. Oz stood on the broken spear's stump and told the station that anyone who could build would build. Anyone who had a hand would lend it. He did not call them clever animals. He called them by their names. Ships came. Not many, not enough, but enough to begin. A salvage barge from Coalbright that had once been a church. A courier painted with jokes in 3 languages. A farmer's scow with soil in sacks and seedlings in pods, and a captain who refused to leave her trees behind, so shipped them anyway. A handful of nadir veterans who'd decided order without life was an error of definitions. A family from a ring that had never had a name, whose children learned to walk on magnets, and whose father could weld a seam with a butter knife and an argument. And from beyond, through gates that were learning to like the taste of the human minor key, came voices. Not only Hearth's knife, others, old arcs, new bricoleurs, cells of resistance that had spent 2 generations pretending humans didn't belong to anyone. They carried stories of Housekeeping's visits, and the tales made even Kestrel quiet. Worlds scoured because they were messy. Stations rebuilt because they made the wrong kind of music. Cultures erased because they told jokes at the wrong time. Housekeeping did not hate. It polished. Humanity learned to be grit. They built a beacon. Not a distress call, a dare. A song shaped to move along gate bones. A language of knocks that said, we're here, we're loud, come listen if you think you can tidy us, bring a big broom. Hearth's knife taught them how to knot an invitation with a trap, a handshake with a knife tucked in the sleeve. Kestrel wrote the verses. 100 other ship brains riffed the chorus. Children banged the rhythm on station rails until it became their heartbeat. They lit it. Housekeeping came. This time the black ships did not merely spill, they arranged. They had learned a little respect. They moved like a teacher who has finally noticed the class has knives. Mara watched them from Midsummer's new nose, armored now, bristling with unlovely additions, painted with swears. Jax stroked a console as if it were a cat that had saved his life by eating someone's hand. Kestrel hummed, a harmony Mara had never heard before. "We can win," Jax said. "We can survive," Mara corrected. "Winning comes in Book 4. "Optimist," Jax said. The battle that followed was not a battle so much as a choral piece composed by people who had never written music and didn't care. The beacon pulsed and the gates spat and the housekeeping ships rearranged and learned and cut and bled shadows. Hearth's knife coordinated those who could bear coordinating and let the rest do what they did best, improvise. A church barge sacrificed its bell to crack a hull. A courier painted jokes on drones and the drones painted insults on enemy sensors. A farmer's scow released soil into space, and the iron in the dirt confused the fine-edge gravimetrics of a ship that had never seen a garden. Nadir veterans took hits like champions and refused to die on the schedule Housekeeping had written for them. In the middle of it, a voice from the sovereignty broke across the bands, sharp as a whip and brittle as glass. "This is Commissioner Gale of the Nadir Sovereign High Table. Cease all illegal transmissions and stand down for rescue." Hearth's knife laughed without humor. "Your rescue tastes like a collar." Commissioner Gale's voice sharpened. "You misapprehend. We offer annexation," Mara toggled transmit. "You misapprehend. We offer survival. Under your banner?" Gale sneered. "Under no banner," Mara said. "Under a truce with whatever is human enough to be stubborn. If the sovereignty can manage stubborn instead of ownership, it is welcome to stand in the line. If not, it can go polish its trophies until Housekeeping throws them away." Silence. Then Gale, "You will regret this insolence." Jack sighed happily. "I missed people threatening us with regret." They did not regret. Not that day. Housekeeping broke. Not entirely. Not forever. But long enough to retreat and count its teeth. Long enough for humans to write a second verse to a song no one had heard before. Survival as a reputation. Cinderspur began to look like a place rather than a wound. The broken spear became a monument with scaffolding and scaffolding upon scaffolding, because humans don't know when to stop adding ladders. Habitat rings spun slower and steadier. The station took a breath and didn't wheeze. Oss returned from a closed room with a face like someone who'd bitten his own tongue and decided the taste was better than lying. "I spoke to Gale," he said to Mara. "The sovereignty will call this place a quarantine. It will pretend quarantine is not a word it uses when it wishes a thing would die without the PR surrounding murder." "Quarantine us," Jack said. "Put a ribbon on the door. We'll hang our laundry on it." Oss stared at them for a long time and then did a thing Mara would not have bet a dirty coin on. He laughed. He laughed like a man who has discovered that the ground beneath him, though messy, holds. He sobered. "No naivete, Captain Noor. The sovereignty will return. With a banner and a broom. It will want Housekeeping's job. It is jealous that anyone else might own the floor. Then it can stand in line," Mara said, "after the universe itself, which tried to tidy us. Humanity's answer is the same, and that answer?" Oss asked, not as a test this time, but as someone collecting a word to warm his pocket. "Bite," Jack said. "Build," Kestrel said. "Together," Mara said. They lit the beacon again. Not as a dare this time, as a map. Through the gate net, across rings older than anyone's pride, along bones that remembered other minds singing other songs, the knock traveled. It said, "If you are messy, if you get in your own way, if you love wrong and fight right and cook stew that tastes like the inside of a wrench but you die for the recipe, come. If you are a machine that believes in jokes, if you are a species that thinks gravity is a suggestion, if you are alone, come." They came. Not in floods, nothing good moves that fast, but in a drift of seeds. And at Acheron, the seeds found soil. Years later, A child stood with magnets on her feet at the rim of the reskinned spear and looked through a viewport at the gate. Her name was Mara Noor Rourke, and she carried a ring in her pocket with a blue earth and knew she was supposed to bite only when polite methods failed, which was often. She had an AI friend named Kestrel, who lived in her mother's ship and sometimes in her doll, and once in her braces when she'd asked very nicely and promised not to tell her parents. "Why do they hate us?" Amina asked, chin on the viewport sill. "They don't," Kestrel said gently. "Hate is too warm a word. They want us to be smooth." "Smooth is boring," Amina said. "Smooth is dead," Kestrel said, and then taught Amina how to speak the minor key that made the gate sing a note that sounded like a door locking from the inside and then unlocked because humans cannot abide a lock for long. Beyond the gate, in the dark where the housekeeping's angles practiced new perfections, something listened and clicked its teeth and tried to decide whether a floor with teeth was still a floor. It would come again. It would polish. That was its habit. Acheron would be there. That was humanity's. On the day that the sovereignty finally arrived, bearing papers and promises and a fleet designed to be persuasive, it found not dirt and not surrender, but a city built from stubbornness, a choir that sang in ugly harmonies, and a gate that had learned to spit on command. Commissioner Gala delivered a speech. No one recorded it. Mara Noor stood at the front of a crowd that included wardens who had thrown away their old names and children who had never learned fear as the sovereignty defined it. Jack stood at her left, Kestrel in her ear. Hearth's knife orbited nearby, patchy and proud, accompanied by ships that had never had banners and never would. "Last chance," Gala said through a smile that would look good on a coin. "Return to order." "Order?" Mara asked. "Your word or ours?" "The correct one," Gala said. "Ah," Mara said. "We prefer the kind we can bleed on." The fleet painted them. The gate's coils hummed. Kestrel sang the minor key. Housekeeping, wherever it was, pricked up its ears at the familiar smell of chaos and considered whether it should bring a dustpan or a cage. Mara touched the ring in her pocket. She thought of a kid on a maintenance crawler flipping a rude gesture at a god. She thought of Kestrel teaching a gate to spit. She thought of her father's hands and Hearth's knife's laugh and the taste of reclaimed coffee that had once meant hope and then meant survival and now meant celebration. She lifted a mic and spoke into the bands that mattered. "To whoever believes, the galaxy is a floor," she said. "Welcome to our house. Wipe your feet or lose them." The first shot came late. It was not theirs. It was a warden. Once a warden. Now a dockhand with a new name and a better temper, firing a flare that bloomed into a sign above the station, a blue circle, a white dot, a joke older than obedience. Someone in the crowd laughed. Someone started singing. Kestrel hummed harmony. Hearth's knife angled like a dancer who knows the step won't end well and does it anyway because it is right. Jack squeezed Mara's hand once hard. Mara squeezed back. The gate sang. The battle that followed did not decide anything forever. No battle does. It decided one day. It decided that when the housekeeping returned, it would find scuffs and stubbornness and a map of teeth. It decided that the sovereignty would learn new definitions for words it had thought were settled. It decided that Acheron was not a gullet, but a throat that could shout. In the epilogue, you tell around tables that wobble and beds that hold too much weight because no one wants to sleep alone anymore. The story is simple. We were told to be smooth. We chose to be sharp. We were told to be quiet. We taught the door to sing. We were told to be owned. We kept our teeth. And when the gatekeepers came to clean the floor, they found a carpet of knives. If you stand at the viewport long enough, you can hear it. The sound that isn't quite a laugh. Not this time. It comes from the gate's bones, from the ship brain's harmonies, from human throats. It's the sound of someone making a mess on purpose. It's the sound of a house that will not be mastered. It's the sound of us.